We start in Zurich, where senior Chinese diplomat Yang Jiechi met with U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Both agreed to restore China-U.S. relations. They also agreed to uphold the consensus reached by Presidents Xi Jinping and Joe Biden during their phone call in September, namely managing differences and avoiding conflict. And for more on that, let's go live to our reporter Li Jianhua in Beijing. Jianhua, hello there. This meeting actually is described as being constructive. Do you think this actually means that U.S.-China relations are looking up?
It's all right, Dongning. It is considered constructive. We know that, Dongning, the talks came less than a month after a phone call between Chinese President Xi Jinping and his U.S. counterpart Joe Biden to rebuild communication channels and implement the consensus reached between the two leaders, as you said. In the Xi and Biden phone call, the U.S. side expressed the view that it was prepared to have more candid exchanges to avoid miscommunication and unintended conflict. And in the Zurich meeting this time, both sides agreed to continue speaking at a senior level. And Yang said that China has noticed the good relations between the world's two largest economies are beneficial to the two peoples and the world as a whole. And China is opposed to defining the relations between the two nations as a rivalry or competition. Yang said that China has noticed the positive attitudes of the Biden administration recently, and the U.S. does not intend to contain China's development and create a new Cold War. And Yang also expressed China's stern positions regarding Taiwan, Hong Kong, Xinjiang, Tibet, the South China Sea, the human rights, in which he demanded that the U.S. not interfere with China's internal affairs. And the U.S. side showed its support for the One China policy. Other topics of discussion, Dongning, included climate change and some issues of regional concerns. So compared with the heated discussions between Yang and Sullivan in March and June, as we all remember, this time the discussions between the two sides saw less drama and with more frank exchanges. But does it necessarily mean that the relationship between the two nations is looking up? Earlier, I talked to an expert.
People are wondering if China-U.S. relations are warming up now. Warm is not yet the right word. Presently, perhaps there's just a little defrosting, a little less ice. Let's get to the point where we're not on the brink of more conflict. Let's see real progress on normalizing trade. Let's see sincere cooperation on vital issues like the pandemic, climate change, security, and so on. Then let's talk about warmth, if not a new friendship.
And Dongning, the meeting comes after U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai laid out the White House's China trade policy. Let's bear that in mind. Tai said that China failed to meet some of the commitments in the two nations' Phase 1 trade deal and sounded pessimistic that the situation would change without a hard line. But whether the two sides are lowering the trade tariffs was not revealed in the talks this time. I guess we have to wait until the talks between China's top officials pretty soon. Now back to you, Dongning.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Li Jianhua reporting from Beijing. Well, the talks are actually the third high-level face-to-face meeting between the two sides since Biden took office, and officials also met in Alaska in March and in July during a visit by U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman. The two-day Alaska meeting was opened with a heated exchange. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged Beijing to return to what he called a rules-based system, while Yang Jiechi hit back at Washington's criticisms of China's internal and foreign policies. And in July, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman in China's Tianjin, and Wang demanded the U.S. not obstruct China's development and violate China's sovereignty or territorial integrity. He also called for settling differences through talks. Sherman said the two countries should rise above their differences to work on global issues. She insisted the U.S. does not want to contain China's development. And now let's get some analysis from Yang Jiechi. He's the Secretary General of China U.S. Relations Research Center at the China Institute of International Studies. Welcome to Global Watch, Professor Teng. Well, senior diplomat Yang Jiechi says China opposes calling relations with America competitive, and the U.S. also says it's not interested in a new Cold War. And as a reporter said just now, this meeting is with less drama and little less ice between each other. Do you think these signs of are kind of a de-escalation between the two sides?
Yes, you are right. This is a new development in relationship between the two countries. I think what Yang Jiechi mentioned is quite right, that we cannot only use competition to describe the current status of the relationship between the two countries. Actually, competition is one side of the coin. Another side, I think we should mention the cooperation, because we are facing a new era. For example, the fast development of multipolarization in international politics. No individual country can meet the common challenge, for example, the pandemic of COVID-19 or the climate change. And we're also facing the globalization of world economy. Days ago, the representative of the U.S., Catherine Tai, mentioned that the United States would like to recouple the relationship between the two countries. I think she's right, because we are, in the same world for economy. We should cooperate. So I think even the President Biden mentioned that the United States would not like to initiate another round of Cold War. He is right. I think at this moment, no country can afford such a price in waging a Cold War between the two major powers. As Mr. Yang mentioned, the cooperation between China and the United States is good for the sake of the two countries, but also for the world.
Right, it is a positive sign that both sides said they would work to manage differences. But the question is, what is or are the biggest difference or differences between the two countries?
But one of the big differences is that the United States actually has adopted a very strange policy toward China. The reason is quite simple. China, has been on the fast development track. So this time, the United States worries about the fast development. They think that someday in the future, China will take the hegemon position of the United States in the world. This is actually a strange logic for the United States. To my understanding, China, even as a major power in the world economy and in world politics, I don't think China will take a hegemon policy toward any country in this world. So I think the United States should change its mentality to cooperate with China, not only to use the Cold War thinking or mentality toward China. So I think at this moment it's a new crossroad for China and the United States to sit down to talk about the way out of current dilemma. I mean, the dilemma is security in economy and in some other affairs. So this is a very important occasion for the two countries to sit down to have a constructive and in-depth dialogue.
Well, working out the differences, especially between the two powers, will be an arduous way and time-consuming as well, but at least the positive attitudes are there. Well, apart from keeping the senior-level dialogue mechanism ongoing, the presidents of China and the US have also agreed to virtually meet by the end of the year. How do you see this potential meeting?
Yeah, this is a very important arrangement for the two countries to have top leaders face-to-face meeting or virtual meeting. We used to say one meeting between the two presidents might matter 6 months for the stability of the relationship between the two countries, but now maybe 6 weeks. But I think at this very important crossroad, we should put the top leaders meeting on the top agenda, because the two presidents will set up new guidelines or new roadmap for the two countries, how to compete, how to cooperate in the future. So I think such a virtual meeting will give very positive impact on the future, especially the stability between the two countries.
Thank you very much, Professor Yang Jiechi from China Institute of International Studies. Thank you very much for your insight.